Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 8th edition of the SASI Debate Challenge, brought to you by Say What, supported by SEAL, SAYWHAT Events and Lifestyle, courtesy of the Nyaradzo Group. And I am your debate master. And you can just call me Master Jumbe. I'll be here to provide some entertaining commentary, as well as provide contextualization and understanding concerning the rules and regulations of this entire debate. Today we have one objective: understanding certain policies when it comes to advocacy. Because I'm not joined by any regular human beings, but I am joined by the leaders and the change makers, the record breakers and the formulators of the future. They have come from far and wide, across the entire nation, from their respective institutions, to say, I am a cut above the rest. I stand for more than the average person. So, let's have them introduce themselves and the respective higher tertiary institutions that they are coming from. Starting with podium number 1.
Tafazo Marawanyika, GZU.
Greetings, everyone. I'm Dorcas Makangani, say GZU.
Wow, that's lovely. Would you say you're ready for success today? You came back in the last time. I don't know if you're going to do the same thing this time. I'm a bit worried. Should I be worried?
Not at all. We are fine.
Okay. Hopefully you can keep my composure. So podium number 2, who do I have the pleasure of meeting today?
Hazel Mashahanya from UZ.
Vanilla Tuta from UZ.
That's amazing. UZ is quite iconic. You won last year. Are you going to do the same this time? Or it's just a one-time thing? You're just a one-trick ponies? Hey, UZ.
We've never been a one-time wonder.
Aha, okay. Let's see what's going on podium number 3. Both of you have glasses. You must have the vision for the future, hey? Let's see. What are you expecting today? What are your names and where are you from?
My name is Tunazo Magwaze. I'm from Manicaland State University of Applied Sciences.
Joined by?
And I'm Tedwana Shikanyamba.
Wow, it's an honor to have you. Are you ready for victory today?
Definitely.
I can't go against a man with a cross. Nothing more powerful than the blood of Jesus. Can't go against that. And on podium number 4, who do we have the honor and pleasure of being with today?
My name is Lakatia Masego from the only online university in Zimbabwe, Zimbabwe Open University.
My name is Takuna Mzenda from Zimbabwe Open University.
Thank you. It is an honor to have you all. I would like to say that the moment that you stepped on these podiums, something miraculous changed within you. I would give you the birds and the bees talk, but in actuality, you've matured in a completely different way. Your minds have shifted. Your hearts have now got a newfound conviction. And you're not just regular students, but you are now seasoned debaters. I will no longer call you students, but honorable delegates, honorable members of parliament and prime ministers. Are you prepared for today's event? I like it. I like the confidence over here. So, being your necessary debate master, I would like to give you the necessary contextualization around today's debate. Today's debate will follow a typical British parliamentary style. This is to ensure the necessary argumentation and ideas are brought out in the best possible way. There will be 2 teams involved. 2 teams that will be proposing an idea and the other 2 teams going against it in opposition. Moreover, you will only have 4 minutes to speak. Speakers, please be notified of not going over or under your designated time. And when it comes to your points of information, your POI, you'll merely raise your hand and say POI, but ensure to have it within the stipulated time of just 15 seconds. This is to ensure the necessary competition, but the brevity of your ideas as well. And without enough jibber-jabber, it's time to get into the motion of the day. The motion for this debate reads as follows. This House prefers advocacy campaigns like #made possible by FP that emphasize economic and national development outcomes over those that center reproductive rights as the primary narrative. I shall repeat the motion once more. This House prefers advocacy campaigns like #made possible by FP that emphasize economic and national development outcomes over those that center reproductive rights as the primary narrative. The motion has been read. The pen is now with the paper of their story. Let's see our story begin and how good it's going to turn out to be. In this moment, we've seen the hashtag within the motion, but don't forget to follow our hashtags as well. #know and act. #SASI8. This is the SASI debate. And you already know what time it is. It's time for us to seal the deal. And we're back, courtesy of SEAL. As you can see, the standard over here is a standard of excellence, and that is the exact standard that we have when it comes to SAYWHAT, events and lifestyle. Now, I will ask kindly for the Honorable Prime Minister to come forward and make their case. Please do listen carefully. Thank you.
So, panel, in preference motions such as these ones, the House that can take the debate is the House that can demonstrate maybe one particular perspective or outlook on a matter is superior to another or has better benefits on a particular group of people as concerns the stakeholders of the matter. As the Prime Minister, my government and I are concerned with the stakeholders that are the nation of Zimbabwe, because that is the context in which this debate is taking place in. And we are talking about how we would like to advance a particular narrative. So this is the first tidbit of framing that I will provide, that this is about narratives, it's about controlling perceptions, it's about the media outlook, it's about what exactly is in the dominant minds of the patients. So in framing our debate, we'd like to say that the advocacy campaigns include things like outreach programs, they include things like moral building activities, they include things like they include things like awareness programs that are targeted towards raising awareness on particular issues. When it comes to matters concerning national development, national and economic development, it simply pertains to issues that are about raising the GDP of the nation to a sustainable level and ensuring that the poverty datum line is an above matter. Why is this contextualization or framing relevant or necessary to this debate? It is because it feeds into our two direct points, which are that this is a debate about context, about narratives, about framing. So our key points are, the first one is that economic development outcomes spill into reproductive right outcomes. And it is important for the narrative, it is important for the narrative that is dominant in the minds of people to consider this aspect. The second point we'll bring is that if the dominant narrative is actually about reproductive rights rather than economic development, which will actually spill into the reproductive rights, it actually denigrates or damages the reproductive rights outcomes as well as the economic development in itself. So, as the Prime Minister, as I mentioned, our primary stakeholders are you, the people of Zimbabwe. We are concerned with ensuring that your economic prospects are raised, and we are also concerned with ensuring that your reproductive rights are benefited. But in order to do this, it is important or it is integral for the populace to have a particular mindset, because we're talking about narratives here. We're talking about the dominant narrative, not that we want to neglect other narratives or neglect other perspectives or outcomes, but we want the dominant narrative to be focused on economic outcomes. So according to our first point, where we're saying that economic development outcomes will spill into reproductive rights, this is because economic development is the foundation from which other things like civil liberties, like reproductive rights, is the foundations from which the nation develops into a holistic entity which is able to provide and sustain for its citizens. Let's look at the status quo in our country. It's no doubt that we are not exactly in flowing waters. We are supposed to try and develop this. So this is what our first point is saying. So if the perspectives of the people take into consideration the importance of economic development and our thrust when it comes to the private sector, when it comes to the public sector, and the thrust is being directed towards ensuring economic development outcomes that are beneficial, this would then ensure not only economic development, but also ensure that reproductive rights are developed as well. And then it comes to the second point. If the dominant narrative considers that, hey, reproductive rights are actually the most important thing, what does this mean? It means that energy and because in the modern age, attention is capital. Attention is money. If energy and effort that could be divested towards ensuring dominance of economic development, which is spilling into these reproductive rights, is taken away, it means that we are going to move at a slower pace than what would be otherwise profitable. Let's look at an example of what happened when the USAID issue was cut off. What causes such things to happen, where that reproductive rights are affected? What happens was that the dominant narrative that was in the mind of the policymakers and the mindsets of those who are in charge in America was influenced by the media, and in that way they ended up reducing attention from where it really matters. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Prime Minister. Oh no, I relate to what just happened. I guess your time was just like me, cut a bit too short, isn't it? So sorry. So sorry. So now at this moment in current juncture, we are going to get into the speech from the delegation of the opposition. May the leader of the opposition delegation please come forward and make their stance.
Mr. Speaker, it's a shame that in this debate we still have a government bench that still values ideals of the capitalistic man. We think for far too long, women have been subjected to being used as subjects for capitalism. For example, birth, right, giving a lot of children because the capitalistic man wanted to have money. We reject that kind of narrative coming from opening government. Two things that make opening government out of this debate. One, they say this debate is about controlling narratives. We think the prevalent narrative is one of human rights. It should take precedence over any amount of money. At any given point in time, when you sort of control the narrative and make economics the dominant narrative, what you do is you fail those particular individuals, but two, you overshadow and commodify reproductive rights, which is something that we don't like in today's debate. We think economics are very fun because people love money, right? People won't have important conversations when it comes to reproductive rights because, well, we can easily just do this with money, right? We reject that kind of thing. But two, we think when you put all your attention to money, it becomes very problematic because there are also populations that don't have access to economics in this debate. Populations such as teenagers, populations such as children that won't have access to that kind of ideal. So even in the best case scenario, let's say their money works, you still don't value those individuals, right? I'm going to show you why particularly is very important for us to reject this particular idea on three levels, right? We think, firstly, in ZIM and beyond the card of reproductive rights, you already have precautions when it comes to state-driven, right? Initiatives. We think FP campaigns have a history of targeting, firstly, poor women for depopulation. This is very important. You're going to get it, why it's particularly important, right? But also we think rights-based advocacy becomes very important, right? Because it builds inclusive and accountable people that are centered on those particular programs, right? But two, we think when they are prioritized, there's things such as informed consent, things such as non-discrimination that comes with that, right? We think you protect against abuse, you protect against pressure, and you protect against donor-driven narratives that they want in today's debate. We think in terms of campaigns like Made Possible with FP, you risk normalizing utilitarian arguments when it comes to very crucial things within this particular debate. I'm going to give you one brilliant argument, and this is debate winning note. We think that, firstly, when you prioritize economic narrative, you risk instrumentalizing women's bodies, you risk and you undermine the moral legitimacy of family planning itself. What does this look like? We think when FP is seen as an economic tool, policymakers use it or push it for the wrong reasons, right? Things such as fertility control, things such as cost saving, because, well, they like money as opening government, right? But two, we think it justifies pressuring poor women to use certain methods, which leads to things such as cohesion and discrimination. Why? Because when you commodify it, it means you make access to those particular individuals very problematic, but also it's very expensive, right? We think we don't like that kind of commodification that's likely to come from opening government. But three, we think you marginalize groups such as that FP don't really need or save the economy, right? People or individuals that are in the LGBT community or people with disabilities, because they are not appealing to that kind of narrative of that particular campaign, right? But also, we think you shift accountability from rights-based kind of service delivery to rights-based targets, right? You think you distort the priorities of who you are supposed to be protecting within that particular status quo, right? But also, we think when rights then remain a primary source from our side, right, we think FP becomes technocratic and it's a project that is divorced from justice and dignity from their side. We think we are likely to sort of provide justice for these women. We think the motion at this core is about feminism. Super proud.
Thank you very much to the opposition delegation. There's been quite an entertaining concept going around today. People talking about the concept of utilitarianism. Do we believe that as a society we should continue to help everyone else, or should it all just be a free-for-all? That's not what we're here to see today. We're here to see constructive collaboration through discussion, bridging the gaps within our societies. Without further doubt, I saw the Prime Minister struggling earlier before. Hopefully the necessary gaps can be filled by the Deputy Prime Minister. May you please come forward and make your stance.
Panel, we think already we show you that reproductive health, reproductive rights themselves should be protected because they are human rights. We don't really go against that as proposition, and thus we are proud to propose. Panel, what does Vanele come here and tells you? Vanele comes here and tells you how from proposition, we're simply trying to make sure that we take away or rob women of their rights to like maternal health care and everything like that. Panel, what we simply tell you is that firstly, the thing that Vanele misses, the chart that Vanele misses in this debate is that at the end of the day, we show you how we think right-based advocacy is important, but we also show you how at the end of the day, we think it is high time we actually put more focus on economic and national development because it leads to the realization of the same rights that we're protecting. Panel, we tell you how, as my partner has already put it out, that the moment when we had the USAID scandal, we had so many people put at risk, right, Panel? We tell you that in a situation where we are trying to protect rights without actually having the adequate resources, we then risk not protecting the very same rights that we want to protect. Panel, we tell you that in a situation where this debate is running as a prefers motion, where we tell you that it's not existing in absolute, what we mean, we simply mean to say is that it's high time we put more preference to advocating for economic and national development rather than putting more preference for advocating for the rights of like reproductive and for reproductive rights. Panel, what we simply tell you is that what we are preferring here is true realization of this right through economic development and national development. What we are preferring is not like undermining the very essence of reproductive rights. Now, what we tell you as affirmative delegations, as simple panel, we tell you how already in the idea of like advocacy and in the idea of like coming up with like primary narratives, as we show you that it builds some sort of like entitlements. Now, those entitlements that are there, it's like when someone knows that this is their right, they're simply going to make sure that they want that right to be realized no matter what may come. Panel, we tell you that becomes problematic in a situation where the nation can't afford to make sure that the realization of that right is there. We tell you of USAID. But also, panel, we tell you that people become too relaxed to want to make sure that they work so that they all realize that right. So what do we tell you in this debate? We simply tell you as proposition that in a situation where we prioritize economic and national development, we rather prioritize the actual realization of that right over like idealistic realization of that right. So we think already opposition loses on the idea of how it's not necessarily a thing about loving money too much. We do value those rights, but we think for us to realize the very same rights that we value, we need to be equipped to realize those. Panel, we think it's high time we look into how these rights are being realized in this day and age. We think already we're highly dependent on countries that can afford, in the Zimbabwean context, to make sure that they fund and make sure that those same reproductive rights, those same women who need maternal care, as Vanele puts it, those same women who are actually dying through birth, those same women whom he paints as if we don't care about them giving birth and stuff like that and dying during the process. Panel, we show you how much we so much care, but because we are not equipped, that is still going to happen. So what we simply fight for is that we prefer a motion that's actually going to bring a long-term realization of that right, that is actual realization. And we also prefer a motion that is actually not going to make it a primary entitlement to say that people should just have these rights realized in a situation where we can't actually afford to make sure that those rights are realized. So what we buy or what we actually give you as proposition in this debate is simple. What you're simply saying is that it's high time we ensure that at the end of the day, we'll be able firstly to afford to make sure that each and everyone can realize that right. Firstly, secondly, we show that in as much as we are reliant on making sure that that right is realized on other countries, we think it's high time we actually make it primary, that we focus on making sure that once we build our economy, once we build our nation, we're actually going to be able to ensure that each and everyone enjoys that right, even when it's taken away from it by other countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Deputy Prime Minister. We will now hear from the Deputy Leader of the opposing delegation. May they please come forward and make their stance clear.
Panel, firstly, we feel that we're extremely saddened by the core or what side proposition necessarily stands for within this debate. We think that they really come from a very patriarchal and sort of like capitalistic perspective that really wants to steal away from the original ideas that come with family planning, and my speech will further elaborate on that. But firstly, rebuttals. We think that Dorcas comes and tells us about economic development and how this is going to bring about realization of the right. Panel, notice that realization of the right is the primary agenda. Yes, we feel that economics is barely the implementation, which is secondary. We think that the moment that you bring implementation and wind it down to economics, you're mainly strategizing and trying to bring about the realization of the rights, which is not important within this. We think that you're still away from the primary idea, which is to realize the right and why it even exists. But why does it even exist? Just a little background. We come and we tell you that primarily, family planning in and of itself only exists because of the dominance of gender equality. We think that gender equality is a key push factor within this because we think that it comes about when people and women realize their bodily autonomy and don't rush within things like birth giving and all of that, and they really prioritize their careers and everything like that. Why is that necessarily important in today's debate? We think that because by virtue of it coming from a gender equality perspective, it should not be trickled down and limited down to economic and capitalistic views. So we think that at the end of the day, we win on that clash because we show you how this is of primary importance. We come and we tell you that at the end of, Manele tells you in his very sophisticated speech that number one, we think that this policy only, family planning only exists in a world where poor women are there and are really disenfranchised by certain systems. We think that by virtue of them being a priority population, taking an economical route to spreading the message will never be the best way. We think that that primarily kind of creates some form of exclusion already because they cannot really contribute to that, number one. They cannot really relate to the economical issues by virtue of them coming from a very disadvantaged population. Secondly, Manele also comes and tells you that at the end of the day, we feel that this really then marginalizes certain groups within society. We think that then this sort of like economizing such a system or trying to spread family planning through economic means and strategies kind of then neglects certain people within society. We think family planning exists even for the teenage girl who is 15, who does not contribute to the GDP of the country at all. We think that the moment that you kind of trickle it down to economics, you bring a level and an amount of exclusion to certain people in certain societies and in certain groups. We don't value that because we don't feel that's the core of it. What do we tell you in our speech? We tell you that this is a human rights thing. We think that the main priority within this debate is the people themselves and the well-being of the people. We don't think economics stand to take a key part within this debate. We think that that's an implementation thing that comes secondarily. That's not important. We think that it's very important that people realize the necessity by realizing the importance of the rights themselves. So we think that at the end of the day, the moment you shift focus to national development and economic outcomes, you shift focus from sexual and reproductive health rights. We feel that this will manifest in different ways, not just family planning, but multiple ways. We think that we don't value that within today's debate. We think that certain human rights should be realized, should be prioritized, and shouldn't be conditioned to economical situations for realization. We think that we win that debate on that major clash. We also come and we tell you that we value the narratives, we value the perspectives. We think that we do not want capitalism to prevail. We rather build a world where gender equality thrives, and we're more than happy to close this debate.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker, for that brilliant explanation concerning our human rights. Human rights are foundational. I believe that they are merely the seeds that we plant in the hearts of every human being that have to grow into their full actualization and realization. When it comes to realization, you need a partner that's going to stand with you. One of your most important rights is the right to have a good time. And we have the perfect partner for you that will stand with you throughout the entire process. And that is SEAL, SAYWHAT Events and Lifestyle. So stay tuned as you understand the standard of excellence that SEAL provides you, as well as all the enthralling little bits of this debate. We'll see you right after the break. And welcome back to the SASI Debate Challenge. Don't forget to text #SASI8 as well as know and act. We are students leading both in equity and change in our various diverse spheres of influence. This is now the second half of our debate. We've heard from our respectable leaders and deputy prime ministers, but now we are going to hear from our respectable whips as well as our members of government and opposition. So now, without further ado, don't forget to pay attention to the partners that support us as well. The partners that stand with us in being students who empower our various societies. And that is undeniably the organization of SAYWHAT as well as the company SEAL, SAYWHAT Events and Lifestyle. So, without further ado, let's get back to the debate. May the respectable member of government come forward to proffer their ideology and make their stance clear to the board.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so first of all, let's talk human rights. There's an issue that is being mentioned of commodifying women's bodies, right? We as the government, we come to you and we are saying that made it possible, #made it possible, doesn't deny rights to people. It just weaponizes them. It weaponizes economically so that we can secure those rights, right? So we're not about to come here and tell you that we're going to dismiss rights, but we're simply going to weaponize the economic side of what we are saying so that we can secure these rights, right? Why are we saying so, right? Okay, we are, as a house, we are prioritizing advocacy campaigns like Made It Possible by family planning that emphasize economic growth, economic national development outcomes over those that center reproductive rights as the primary narrative. Why are we doing this? First of all, because this is just a strategic pivot, right? This is a strategic pivot. This is not our main mandate. We're just using this so that we can secure those rights of those women that we're talking about through this angle, right? How? This mobilizes treasury officials, religious leaders, and presidents. How does it do that? It does that by framing contraceptive, as GDP growth, not gender revolt, right? Why are we avoiding gender revolt? Because economic narratives speak the language of resource constraint and facial decision makers, right? Compelling them to act more than us coming here and talking about rights. Why is this so? We generally think that rights backlash are a real threat, especially to the women that this side of the house was talking about, right? So we feel like, for example, in the 2019 #MyBodyMyChoice protest, while they were very well intentioned, they hardened the parliament's anti-abortion stance, demonstrating how confrontational rights rhetorically can inadvertently hinder progress, right? Let's talk, for example, how we are going about this issue. We are talking about the issue of the argument that rights language, it alienates facial decision makers, right? How? Because development framing builds unlikely coalition, while rights framing divides the coalition, right? How does this happen? Well, let's say we are talking about human capital catalyst, right? We're talking about women as being people who are productive, as people who are strong, right? How is this going to help us economically? Denied, sir. When we have healthier, when you have more educated women, right, these people can now participate longer. Let's say, for example, we're talking about the issue of pregnancy, right? If you're talking about, like, Made It Possible by family planning, we're talking about women who now have a right over their own body, right? We can now get to decide when they're going to enter into parenthood, right? What does this do? This leads to healthier, more educated women who can now participate longer, right? And what does this do? This leads to more production in the workforce because they're going to be there longer.
Please take
How? Denied, ma'am. More productive in the workforce due to delayed entry into parenthood. And this then causes a reduction in economic burden of high dependency ratios. When we have women who cannot take care of themselves due to certain things that are not being addressed due to family planning issues, right? We have a higher dependency ratios, right? But then if we solve that issue, that means like we have a higher a number of women who are not in the high dependency ratio numbers, right? We have women who can now stand for themselves. We have women who can now contribute even further to economic growth, right? So this is just a bait that we're going to use because we're talking about like the fact that backlash is a very practical thing, right? So we're trying to avoid that by saying, okay, we're giving you this bait. We're going to be using these women, or not using them, but we're going to be framing it in such a way that women can now get into a position where they can help us economically, right? And they can contribute to economic growth, which will then lead to investors being able to, yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member of Government. I will now call upon a member of the opposition delegation to come forward and take centre stage and make their stance heard.
Panel, we think that what closing government comes and tell you in this debate is actually out. Commodification of women is actually wrong in actual sense. You come here and tell us that you want to compel politicians to act. Why would they be compelled to act? Instead, they should act without being compelled, right? You come here as the closing half and tell us that my body, my choice failed. It failed because politicians only support things that benefit their pockets, right? So we think that your case is actually out. You say that when we focus on economic growth of women, we actually focus more on making women healthier. Women can be healthy without you commodifying them, right? So we think that our case is opposition, particularly from closing opposition, stands in this debate. As we extend to what the opening opposition came here in this debate and clarified, we think that human rights are actually important in this debate. We think that when we uphold human rights, actually, we make framing family planning as a reproductive right. It's essential for upholding the human rights of individuals and make it free for them to make informed decisions, right? Okay, so I'll give you an example of an organization that supports human rights in terms of family planning, CITAO, that advocates for the right of family planning and is enshrined in the international human rights, right? And also, as our extension is side closing opposition, we think that a balanced approach will work in this debate, whereby we look at whereby we integrate the both reproductive rights and development outcomes that may be the most effective way in this debate, right? And also, we think that we need to empower women. Women need to be empowered by also emphasizing on reproductive rights, empowerment of women, or if women can help them make informed choices about their bodies, because their bodies are their choices, that they need to make informed choices about their bodies, right? And also, we need to take accountability and transparency in this debate, whereby we look at a women right-based approach to family planning promotes accountability and transparency, or ensuring that governments are held responsible for fulfilling their obligations to provide access to quality reproductive health services. So what have we come here and said in this debate? In our extension, we think that a balanced approach will work in this debate, number one. Number two, we need to empower women rather than seeing them as commodities, right? Number three, we also want to look at accountability and transparency, whereby we look at a human rights approach, right? And also, as an example, I think that My Body, My Rights campaign is actually promotes sexual and reproductive rights for women, and actually we need to move it as it helps us as women to decide. And women can decide and actually decide what they want to do with their bodies. And with that, I beg to differ. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. I will now call upon the Government Whip to take center stage and make their stance heard. May they please approach the podium.
Panel, I think when your house is on fire, you don't shout thermodynamically right. You shout your house is on fire. Why? Because it attracts the need and agency that is needed in this debate, right? We think with issues that have to do with rights, we think that refusing to strategically frame family planning as refusing to strategically frame family planning is a privilege. Rural Zimbabwean women need access, they need results, not performative radicalism that leaves them without services. Panel, we think these women rights, we think women need these rights, we think women need these services, we think women need solutions that are based, coming from what? From the economic derivation of what we come to from us coming to believe that resources that are needed to make sure that these rights are implemented, they are coming from what? The economy that we need, the economy functioning, the government and those that are in power, they have a better stance to prioritize these rights, right? Rights are rights, they're okay with that, but their implementation comes from what? By us having these resources, right? Not them just being in a position whereby they feel like they don't have resources, now they cannot act, right? Now, we'll come and tell you that the whole opposition bench is talking about patriarchy, right? They come and talk about radicalism, that we need to stand radical for our own rights, but they neglect the solutions that are needed by women in rural areas. They don't come and tell us how then, by these rights being implemented, is it going to solve the needs that these women face, right? We don't get that from the whole opposition bench, right? Now, the problem that we have with our government is like this. They come and tell us that economic solutions, they are going to benefit us in the long run. But we come and tell you that when we start talking about economics now, then it's a current issue that we need to highlight, and it starts to attract resources now, then it's very much important for us. I'll take you later, sir. Now, I think then it then gives us in a position whereby we can prioritize these rights at the same time we're developing our economy, right? The problem that we also have with the opposition is that they come and tell us that rights are not negotiable, right? We think rights, they are fundamental, yes, but women's suffrage movements do not just tend to change by voting, right? We tend to vote for these rights, people get into parliament and they vote for them, they are put in place, they're constitutionalized, but does it then really affect the current livelihood of people? Rights, I think they are there to improve the lives of people, to make sure that they're in a better position to live, right? Now, what we're going to tell you now is, in the war of Zimbabwean women's future, we think that hashtag made possible by family planning does not surrender its strategic redevelopment. We choose to trade poetic righteousness for something truly radical, actual, tangible results. Because dignity isn't merely recited in manifestos, it's built in clinics that stay open. It's built when budgets are passed, budgets that favor these women. It's built when these women are able to get the resources that they need, right? We think as much as they talk about patriarchy on the whole opposition bench, they don't give us a possible solution of what then should we do in this state, right? Should we just pass rights and ignore the current needs the current needs of the women that are troubled, right? I think on our own side, we come and give you the solutions to this. We come and tell you that when we prioritize, when we frame the needs of women as development issues, then the government is in a better position to understand what are the needs of the women. The government is better to understand how is it going to favor their own development structures. Because our budget is limited, we then believe that is a time that we shout.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. It's now time for the final speaker of this debate. May the closing whip please come up and provide their stance on the argument.
In this year debate, we have heard the government talk about building houses, but how can you build a house without having a firm foundation? If you comply to yourself that you want to have a house that is lavish, but have a foundation that is broken, how then can you help the people that you have live in the house? So by the government is here talking about profitability. Profitability in itself does not help the people in society live the life that they want. Another point that I'll make here, human rights in themselves are what people need, and you can't then say that money is of basic agency when you do not address what people need at that current moment in time. Women are facing issues of gender-based violence. Women are facing issues of unintended pregnancies, and women are facing issues of them receiving STIs, but you are then saying that maybe later in time we'll help them face these issues, but at the current moment, what are you doing then? I want to ask you then, as the government, you have only talked about profitability in this situation. Then, what do you have to do about situations of corruption? Do you have any way to address the situations, or you are just speaking in light-hearted terms that one day, when the world is right, we will help you people? The other point that I have to make is that marginalization of groups. Not everyone has money to be able to buy. Not everyone has money to be able to buy these commodities that you think of. Not everyone has the opportunity to be able to participate in the economic development of a country. Then how then are you able to put these people into this economy and be able to help them in their current needs when the human rights that they actually need at that moment, you do not view them as important, but you view the money as of significant importance? Again, in this debate, I have heard downplaying of rights where they are viewed as they will be needed later. Then tell me, what then are you going to do to a girl child that has been raped, that is facing issues at that current moment in time? Are you going to tell that child that maybe later will be able to help you when the economy is better and you have built it? So then I say the reasons why we would win this point, we would win this argument, is that our view is of balanced approach, where we view the economy as aligned to the people, where what the economy is built for is for the people, and not just for the higher-ups who view that maybe we should do this, maybe we should approach this view, maybe we should be a part of this, but not a part of human rights that are needed by people. It empowers women, it empowers people at that current moment in time, not specifically of an agency that you have built in an agency that you should be working on as the government in itself, not building up on people saying maybe one day we'll be able to help you. It builds up accountability, as I have asked for. This is why we should win. Accountability in the government. You were put in power to be able to help people. Then why then do you tell us that maybe one day, when our economy is able to build up, then maybe one day we'll be able to help you? This really affects us, and we see this as a downplaying of human rights that are very essential to the people. How can we then have a big economy, a great economy, when we don't have the people that deserve this economy? Please tell me, how is that possible? Therefore, we view that based on these points, we win this argument, and I give it up to the panel to decide. Thank you.
I would now like to take this moment to thank all of the debaters that have spoken today. Honorable Prime Ministers and opposition delegates, you have performed brilliantly. However, there is something just slightly a bit more brilliant than you today, and that is undeniably the various partners that have made this event even possible. This has been the SASI Debate Challenge 2025, the 8th edition, brought to you by SAYWHAT, supported by SEAL, Sawira Events and Lifestyle, courtesy of the Nyaradzo Group. It has been an honor to be with you throughout this debate, but understand that we are not over at all. There's still so much more coming, as we will allow for a short break, just a quick short break, for you to understand and relax and breathe. We'll be back just right now after the deliberations of the adjudicators. See you soon, right after the break. And we are back. Welcome to the 8th edition of the SASI Debate Challenge. This has been the most enthralling debate that I've ever seen in my life. Autonomy, independence, trust, and adaptability are critical aspects of the human being's lifestyle. However, there's something else that can improve your lifestyle, and that is your Sawira. Sawira, events, and lifestyle. So stay tuned for very important information. I'll now take this time while the deliberations are going on to understand the feeling in the camp right now. This is warfare. Let's see how the soldiers feel after fighting on the battlefield. So, podium 2, how do you feel?
We feel okay. I just tired.
Would you say that you're confident of the results that might come soon?
Yeah, pretty much.
That's lovely. How about you on podium 1? We started off on a bit of a rocky road, but do you think things are going to be smooth? You've smoothed out the necessary potholes today?
No, the road itself wasn't rocky. We are fine.
Ah, we like it. I like the highway. Fully smooth, isn't it? Okay. And on podium number 3, what are your feelings with the results that could come at any moment now?
I don't know, I'm surprisingly calm. I think we're just going to accept whatever happens.
I love that. I love that. I think there's a very famous saying that's been going around. They say, it is what it is. And whatever happens, happens. And on podium number 4, how are you feeling with the upcoming results of this debate?
Personally, I just want to know why we're always against the motions. But we're feeling fine. I think we tried our best, and I will see.
True. Very true. I hope that you understand that after this, quite the interesting thing is happening. We're going to go into the semi-finals. This is full elimination. I'd like to thank those that have made it this far, but in the semi-finals, there will be no mercy at all. That cross won't be able to help you in the future, brother, if you don't have the tenacity to stay in the game. After the semi-finals, we'll go to the finals, and then we have the necessary champions. And podium 1, what would you like to say to someone watching back home?
What basically would like to say is debate is a game. Don't take it to heart. Learn and grow in the process.
Good to see you win. If it's not you, anything happens. And with podium 2, you have a legacy and a track record that's quite fascinating. What would you like to say to your deans and your chancellors at the moment right now at UZ?
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for your opportunity. So if you were to not win, who would you like to see win?
My partner.
Aww. So at the moment, the adjudicators have concluded within their deliberations. I wish that I had the esteemed opportunity to come to all of you and give you the necessary awards and accolades that you deserve for your hard work and perseverance. Debating is not easy at all. It is a cutthroat sport that requires quick thinking, advocacy, and lots of intelligence, not to mention the sleepless nights that go into preparation. Your fingers probably hurt from all the AI you've been using, hey? But let's get into the true results. I will now call upon the Chief Adjudicator for this debate to provide you with the necessary results. Thank you. Chief Adjudicator, please come forward.
Okay, good evening. And again, my name is Liam, and I was chairing this round. Firstly, for feedback's sake, this was a very good round. The quality of argumentation was okay, to an extent that we didn't necessarily use arguments or level of contribution, but we had actually to vote on it. So on a 2-1 split, the winner of this debate is opening opposition. Then in second place is opening government. In third place is closing government. And then in fourth place is closing opposition. Thank you.
Well, the results have come out. As we can see, they gave every single thing that they had. But in life, we often have expectations and disappointments. But there's one partner that will never disappoint you, and that is SEAL, Sawira, Events and Lifestyle. We are very thankful to you for your kind support and dedication to helping the change makers of the future. This has been the SASI Debate Challenge 2025 8th edition, and brought to you proudly by SAYWHAT, inclusively courtesy of the Nyarazo Group. I have been your debate master, and you can just call me Master Jumbe. We'll see you next time. Goodbye.
I look up in the sky, God is my angel. I look up in the sky, God gonna save me. I've got a vision, so I gotta work on it. Nobody bring me down, so I gotta go, gotta go.
I got a dream. When you know you have a dream,